Over, I worked Bull Durham out to one side, and after explaining the jacketing I had got from Priest, and the partial promise I had made not to bet, gave him my $40 to wager for me if he got a chance. Bull and I were good friends, and on the understanding that it was to be a secret, I intimated that some of the velvet would line his purse. On reaching the tent, we found about half a dozen men loitering around, among them the old man, who promptly invited us all to have a drink with him. A number of us accepted and took a chance against the vintage of this canvas roadhouse, though the warnings of the Montana horse buyer were fully justified by the quality of the goods dispensed. While taking the drink, the old man was lamenting his poverty, which kept him from betting more money, and after we had gone outside, the saloon keeper came and said to him in a burst of generous feeling, "Old sport, you're a stranger to me, but I can see at a glance that you're a dead game man. Now, if you need any more money, just give me a bill of sale on your mare and mule, and I'll advance you $100. Of course, I know nothing about the merits of the two horses, but I noticed your team as you drove up today, and if you can use any more money, just ask for it." The old man jumped at the proposition in delighted surprise. The two re-entered the tent, and after killing considerable time in writing out a bill of sale, the old graybeard came out shaking a roll of bills at us. He was promptly accommodated, Bull Durham making the first bet of 50, and as I caught his eye, I walked away shaking hands with myself over my crafty scheme. When the old man's money was all taken, the hangers-on of the place became enthusiastic over the betting, and took every bet while there was a dollar in sight amongst our crowd, the horse buyer even making a wager. When we were out of money, they offered to bet against our saddles, six-shooters, and watches. Flood warned us not to bet our saddles, but Quarternight and Stallings had already wagered theirs, and were stripping them from their horses to turn them over to the saloon keeper as stakeholder. I managed to get a $10 bet on my six-shooter, though it was worth double the money, and a similar amount on my watch. When the betting ended, every watch and six-shooter in the outfit was in the hands of the stakeholder, and had it not been for Flood, our saddles would have been in the same hands. It was to be a 300-yard race, with an ask-and-answer start between the riders. Stallings and the old man stepped off the course parallel with the river, and laid a rope on the ground to mark the start and the finish. The sun had already set, and twilight was deepening, when the old man signaled to his boy in the distance to bring up the mare. Wheat was slowly walking the brown horse over the course, when the boy came up cantering the mare, blanketed with an old government blanket, over the imaginary track also. These preliminaries thrilled us, like the tuning of a fiddle for a dance. Stallings and the old homesteader went out to the starting point to give the riders the terms of the race, while the remainder of us congregated at the finish. It was getting dusk when the blankets was stripped from the mare, and the riders began jockeying for a start. In that twilight stillness we could hear the question, "Are you ready?" and the answer, "No," as the two jockeys came up to the starting rope. But finally there was an affirmative answer, and the two horses were coming through like arrows in their flight. My heart stood still for the time being, and when the bay mare crossed the rope at the outcome an easy winner, I was speechless. Such a crestfallen looking lot of men as we were would be hard to conceive. We had been beaten, and not only felt it, but looked it. Flood brought us to our senses by calling our attention to the approaching darkness and setting off in a gallop toward the herd. The rest of us trailed along silently after him in threes and fours. After the herd had been bedded and we had gone into the wagon, my spirits were slightly lightened at the sight of the two arch conspirators, Stallings and Quarternight, meekly riding in bareback. I enjoyed the laughter of the Rebel and McCann at their plight, but when my bunkie noticed my six-shooter missing, and I admitted having bet it, he turned the laugh on me. "That's right, son," he said, "and don't you take anybody's advice. You're young yet, but you'll learn. And when you learn it for yourself, you'll remember it that much better." That night, when we were on guard together, I eased my conscience by making a clean breast of the whole affair to my bunkie, which resulted in him loaning me $10 with which to redeem my six-shooter in the morning. But the other boys, with the exception of Officer, had no banker to call on as we had, and when Quarternight and Stallings asked the foreman what they were to do for saddles, the latter suggested that one of them could use the cook's while the other could take it bareback or ride in the wagon. But the Montana man interceded in their behalf, and Flood finally gave in and advanced them enough to redeem their saddles. Our foreman had no great amount of money with him, but McCann and the horse buyer came to the rescue for what they had, and the guns were redeemed. Not that they were needed, but we would have been so lonesome without them. I had worn one so long I didn't trim well without it, but toppled forward and couldn't maintain my balance. But the most cruel exposure of the whole affair occurred when Nat Straw, riding in ahead of his herd, overtook us one day out from Ogallala. "I met old Says-I Littlefield," said Nat, "back at the ford of the Republican, and he tells me that they won over $500 off this Circle Dot outfit on a horse race. He showed me a whole basketful of your watches. I used to meet old Says-I over on the Chisholm Trail, and he's a foxy old innocent. He told me that he put tar on his harness mare's back to see if you fellows had stolen the nag off the picket rope at night, and when he found you had, he robbed you to a finish. He knew you fool Texans would bet your last dollar on such a cinch. That's one of his tricks. You see, the mare you tried wasn't the one you ran the race against. I've seen them both, and they look as much alike as two pint bottles. My, but you fellows are easy fish." And then Jim Flood lay down on the grass and laughed until tears came into his eyes, and we understood that there were tricks in other trades than ours. End of chapter 16.